So our next speaker today is Jo Ryan, and Jo was a registered nurse, or are you still a registered nurse? No longer a registered nurse for nearly 20 years, mainly working in paediatrics. She worked as a full-time nanny for many years in Australia and overseas, which has enhanced her understanding of babies and young children and the pressures of parenting. Jo will be sharing her experience as a baby sleep expert and some techniques from her book, Baby Bliss. She's happy for you to also ask questions throughout the session. Welcome, Jo.
Thank you. So thanks for having me along today. It's really nice to see a room full of nannies, all with smiling faces and looking inspired and, ready to take on the world of children. I deal a lot with mothers and babies and parents generally, but mostly mothers and babies, and a lot of nannies as well. And in my experience, as you probably will know, there's a huge focus these days on sleep and babies' sleep. Is everyone going to nod? Yep. And mothers particularly get very focused on their baby's sleep, and we get it, right? Mothers have to go back to work and do lots of things, and they often don't have a lot of external help in terms of family members to help them. So these days, sleep is a huge thing, and that's why I have a business totally around sleep. So what I'm going to try and do is just give you a few little tips about babies and sleep, because I think as nannies, you're at the front line of that, and the mothers and the parents are going to be looking to you to help with the baby's sleep. And I think if a baby sleeps well, or at least you're working towards a baby sleeping well, then everything else falls into place really easily. And if everyone's sleeping well, then everyone's happy generally. So my philosophy around babies and sleep is all about gentle stuff, It's about baby-led. I think there's a lot of pressure these days, and there's a lot of, different philosophies out there, a lot of strict, routines and strict ways of teaching babies to sleep. And I don't subscribe to that. I just think that it puts a lot of extra pressure on you and the mothers and the babies to fit into this very rigid routine. But routine is great, and babies and small children really respond to routine. But I think we need to be realistic about when that can happen. And so for tiny babies, it's best to just go with the flow a bit, and sleeping in your arms or falling asleep on the boob or the bottle or that sort of thing is totally fine. A lot of mothers come to me and they're like, oh, I don't want to create bad habits around my baby's sleep. And they're expecting these tiny little babies to, sleep on their own and sleep really well and sleep through the night, and that's unrealistic. So I think being realistic about your expectations and managing your parents' expectations, the parents of the baby's expectations, is good too. So little babies, newborn babies, the one thing that's really important, this is what I try to teach new parents, is to understand how much sleep they need and how long they should be awake for. That kind of sets your routine. So newborn babies up to about 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, can really only be awake for an hour at a time. They just can't cope with more than that. And a lot of people, before they have their own babies, have had no experience with babies or small children. And so they think they work like we do, which is that when we're tired, we fall asleep. And as you probably know, babies and small children, when they're tired, they're much harder to get to sleep. They won't go to sleep. Their brains are just buzzing. Because if you think about their brains, they're just developing all the time. And so the more overstimulated they are and the more tired they are, they can't shut down. So it's really important to just know a bit about how much sleep your baby needs at each age. So from newborns to about 6 to 8 weeks, it's about an hour. And again, this is not set in stone, but the other thing is to always watch your baby. And notice what your baby's tired signs are, and notice that. So it's about an hour, but some babies might last a little bit longer. When they're brand new, they might only last 45 minutes before they start yawning and, rubbing their eyes, which is obvious tired signs. And then that sort of increases to about an hour and a half, from about 8 weeks to about 4 to 5 months, and then it increases to 2 hours. And so, that's what will set your routine. So it's really important to know the sleep needs of a baby, because it doesn't really matter about the time. There's some routines out there that are like at 9 a.m. you must put your baby down, and then they write things like, put your sleepy baby to bed. It's like, right, so what if my baby's not sleepy? So it sets you up to feel really stressed, and the parents to feel really stressed about that. So watching your baby, watching the babies that you care for, noticing when they're tired, and obvious tired signs, we all know, yawning, crying, grimacing, flapping about. Little babies flap about when they're really tired. They're the obvious signs. So watching that and keeping an eye on the clock in terms of how long that baby's been awake for. And it's really good for you guys to know this stuff, because you can then educate the parents and the mothers, particularly, when they first bring a new baby home. They're tired, they're exhausted, they've just been through childbirth, they're emotional, they're hormonal, they're trying to learn to breastfeed. There's a whole lot of things going on. So you are like the number one support person for those mums, and not just for newborns, for mothers of any age child, and if you can help them and educate them around the baby's sleep needs, then that's a huge, huge help. So as I mentioned, I'm not a fan of controlled crying. I'm not judgmental if parents do control crying. That's totally their choice. But for me, it doesn't sit well, because I just feel that for young babies, particularly babies under 6 months, they often can't control their crying. They can't control themselves. And so particularly if you're changing routine, or you're dropping feeds, or you're getting rid of dummies, or you're taking them out of their wrap, it's important to help them through that. So to just sort of shut the door and say, sorry, mate, good luck with that. You're not getting that anymore, is a little bit unfair. So what we teach at Baby Bliss is a gentle settling technique. So we stay with the babies the whole time. We soothe them by patting them or stroking their backs. We pick them up when they're upset and we soothe them. But the ultimate aim is to teach these babies, or to work towards getting them used to falling asleep in their bed. Because if they can ultimately fall asleep in their bed, that sets up the sleep for all time. A lot of parents get into habits when they're young of rocking the babies to sleep in their arms, which is totally fine when they're tiny. But the other thing that I say to new parents is, don't be afraid to put your baby down awake. Often parents will think that the baby needs to be asleep, so they start doing all this stuff about getting the baby to sleep. They're walking, they're jiggling, there's a fitball phenomena going on. Does anyone know that? Yeah. There's this whole, people say, I'm bouncing on the fitball. I'm like, well, when did that start? This whole fitball thing, pushing them in the pram, driving them in the car, there's a whole lot of things. And sometimes you might have to do that, and that's okay. But ultimately, we want to work towards the babies falling asleep in their bed. So, when they're tiny, if all the stars are aligned, they might actually fall asleep on their own in their bed, But as they get bigger, if they're well fed, if they're not overtired, if they don't have wind, if they don't have reflux, all those sort of things, popping them down awake is totally okay. You may need to go back and help them, but don't be afraid to put the baby down awake. So that's one of the big things I like to teach the parents. So the other any questions so far? Please just put your hands up if you've got any questions. I just sort of ramble on and on and on. Yeah. So the other thing that I get asked a lot about is sort of what sleep regressions are there? Like, what are the milestones of sleep? Because there are definite, all babies are kind of the same. We're all the same. And we all sleep the same, ultimately. So there are a few little sleep regressions that happen particularly in that first 12 months. So first we have, catnapping. You heard of catnapping? So that's when you've got your baby who's once was this amazing sleeper when they were tiny and you kind of had to wake them to feed. And now all of a sudden they're awake after 45 minutes. And it's like clockwork on the dot of 40 to 45 minutes. And often parents will go, oh, well, they must not need any more sleep. I'll just get them up. And it becomes a really bad habit. Catnapping usually starts around the 8 to 10 week mark. And it's usually, I think it's a result of lots of developmental change. It's when babies start to really start noticing the world around them, and they differentiate night and day. So they sleep differently during the day. It's like us, when we sleep during the day, you never get into that really nice deep sleep that you do at night. And babies start to do that as well. Plus, as I say, they're interested in their environment. They start to want to move more, so they'll wake up and go, oh, what's that over there? What's that? So that's one of the first big regressions. So we definitely have a philosophy, and we see a lot of parents that are dealing with catnapping babies. So we definitely have a sort of technique around that. It's all about feeding your baby, making sure they're getting full feeds, because often they'll start to snack around that age as well. Resettling them once they wake, like don't just get them up. Don't think that's enough. Try to put them back to sleep. So that's the first big regression. And then we have the 4-month sleep regression. We heard of that? So that's often a kick-on from the catnapping. People will say to me, oh, my baby catnaps during the day, but they actually sleep really well at night, so I don't really care. I'm like, okay. And then, what happens around 4 months is the night goes pear-shaped, and then they come in and go, help, it's all wrong. And often it's a kick-on from that. So 4 months, again, is another big major developmental leap for babies. They start to move their hands. What's that? They start to grab. They start to be interested in people, and looking. And often that means, that their brain is a bit more wired. They're a little bit more, buzzing, so that can affect their nighttime sleep as well. And then again, there's another huge big leap around 6 months, which is when babies' nighttime sleep changes. Their sleep cycles at night change, and this is amazing. They start to sleep around 6 months, like they will for the rest of their life. It's just amazing, the way their brains work. So they start to have these definite periods of the night where they're in really deep sleep, and then when they're in dream sleep. So babies generally will go into deep, deep sleep not long after they've gone to bed at night, and they stay in that deep sleep till around midnight. And this is for toddlers, teenagers, though they tend to, sleep a bit later. But you know what it's like if you go to bed early before midnight and you wake up, you feel like you've had that really good deep sleep. And that's why babies really need to go to bed early as well. Babies and toddlers, they need to go to bed early, around 7 o'clock, or before that. But 7 o'clock usually is the cutoff. I get a lot of calls about toddlers, and I'm sure a lot of you care for toddlers. And parents say to me, oh, my toddler won't go to bed till 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, well, why? What's going on? And they're like, oh, they just don't want to. I'm like, I didn't want to go to bed either. Even when I was 16, I was still made to go to bed at 8:30 at night, So I go, well, who's running the show? Like toddlers won't want to go to bed. Absolutely not. That's what they're designed to do. They're designed to push us. So that's why it's really important to have those rituals around sleep too. This is what we do every night. We have dinner, we have a bath, you have a book, we do this, and then you go to bed. And that's just the way it is. And sorry, there is no negotiation on that. And when you maintain the line, they get it. They'll always push, and that's fine. That's the nature of growing up and being a toddler and being a child. But if you just go, no, this is the way we do it, this is the way we've always done it, So that's why going to bed early is important for babies and toddlers, because they get that deep sleep. And if you watched the baby or toddler sleep, you'd see that they're just totally out to it. You could go into that room and, play YMCA and they wouldn't, wake up. And then around midnight, they come out of that deep sleep. So midnight is a classic wake time, and then midnight to 4-ish, they're dream sleeping. So if you watch them, that's when they move around a lot. And if they're not great sleepers, that's when they wake a lot. And then around 4 again, another really wakeful time of the night, they're transitioning again, they drop back into deep sleep just to finish off their night. So it's really important to know the way babies' sleep works, so then you can kind of work out why perhaps they're waking. Babies that have sleep associations, older babies, like babies over 6 months, toddlers who are being fed overnight when they don't really need it, they'll just keep waking for that. So what we do is we get rid of those associations, obviously age appropriately when they're ready, and they don't need night feeds. So that's another big leap. And then we've got the separation anxiety that kicks in around 10, 11 months. Sometimes with girls it's a little bit earlier, and that can cause more sleep disturbances. Oh, stay with me. And that goes on through toddlerhood. I want you to stay with me. I'm tired, I'm hungry, I need to do a poo, I need to, toddlers, they start negotiating. So that's why ritual, again, is really important for toddlers particularly. No, we've done that, we do that, we've gone through our nighttime ritual, it's sleep time. Any questions? Yes? How long do 4-month-olds have to sleep for? Overnight or generally 24 hours? So a 4-month-old will generally have 3 to 4 day sleeps. So 2 big ones. This is ideally an hour and a half. Yeah, 2 sleep cycles. So an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in the middle of the day, 45 minutes. And if they've started their day early, they might need another sort of half hour, 45 minutes to get to bedtime. 3 to 4. And then overnight, 4-month-old, probably 2 feeds a night, maybe around sort of 10, 11 p.m, and then again around 4 a.m. Yeah. Any more last minute questions? Yep. Hang on.
Pick it up on the video. Hello? Yeah.
If parents are giving their babies bottles
Yep.
about 15 months old because they're waking crying,
Yep.
and they give them a bottle and they go back to sleep,
Yep.
is that okay?
No.
No. So
Oh, it's okay. I'm
Yeah.
not no judgment here, but it just means they'll keep waking.
So normally if he wakes and he's sort of, hysterical, they'll give him a bottle.
Yeah, and he goes
sort of
straight
try
back to
and
sleep.
soothe him.
Yeah.
And he seems to do it as well, just with a back pat.
Yeah.
So I should tell them to...
Yeah, to cut the bottle out,
Yeah.
because it's like a habit.
Yeah.
They wake and they have this association with going back to sleep, which is the bottle. And it's not about the milk, ultimately. It's about the sucking, because the
Yeah.
sucking calms them down
So
and
what-
soothes them.
So what happens if he doesn't drink all of his bottle before bed? And then
At 15 months old, it doesn't matter. He's eating food. Food is the most important thing.
He's not great with his food as well. So
But they're second guessing. The
Yeah.
thing is that if you woke up every night and had a big milkshake in the middle of the night, you'd wake up and you wouldn't be particularly hungry.
yeah.
So a lot of parents get into that, they didn't eat much during the day, so I'll have to feed them overnight.
Yeah.
And in fact, when you cut them off at night, their appetite increases during the day. We're supposed to eat during the day,
Yeah.
not overnight,
Okay.
for older babies and toddlers.
Yeah.
So the thing is, yes, the first night of dropping that bottle will be incredibly difficult, but just stay with him, tell them to just sit with him, soothe him, comfort him, pick him up, calm him down. Once they've done it once without that bottle, it's amazing, particularly for a 15-month-old, how quickly he'll get it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately my time's up.
No, you've got time. If you
Oh,
want
do I
any
have more time?
questions?
Any more questions? No, they're telling me no more time.
No more time. My goodness. Okay.
But please have a look at my website. There's a lot of information on there. It's babybliss.com.au. If you need any more information, just contact me. I'm sure Anne-Marie, the girls, will give you some contact details. But good luck. And you're amazing, all of you. Thank you.